I still remember that night. The night I died. Or at least, that's what they told me later. It was raining outside, that kind of slow, heavy rain that feels like sorrow falling from heaven. The lights in the hospital hallway flickered every few seconds. I could hear the steady rhythm of machines beeping beside me, counting every fragile breath I took. I was tired. So tired. My name is Evelyn Mae Johnson, 79 years old. Mother of 3, grandmother of 7. I had lived a full life, for so I thought. But in that hospital bed, I felt smaller than ever. My hands looked like paper, thin and trembling. The 4th line in my arm felt cold, like ice slipping under my skin. They told me my heart was weak. Too weak to keep fighting. The nurse, a kind young woman named Clara, checked on me every hour. She smiled every time she came in, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I'd been in that room for days. Some nights, she would hold my hand and whisper prayers under her breath, thinking I couldn't hear. But I did. And that night, I knew something was changing. The air felt different, heavy, but still. I remember hearing the rain fade away, like the world itself was holding its breath. My chest felt tight, each inhale smaller than the last. I tried to call for Clara, but my voice barely came. Out a faint whisper swallowed by the sound of the machines. My thoughts slowed. Memories started flashing before my eyes. My babies, when they were little. Their laughter in the backyard. The smell of cornbread in my kitchen. My husband humming gospel songs on Sunday mornings. And then, silence. Everything went dark. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel fear. I just felt light. Like I was floating in warm water. The pain in my chest was gone, the weight of my years gone too. I felt young again, strong, peaceful. But then I heard something. A voice, soft, crying, "Lord, please. Please don't let her go yet." It was Clara. I could see her kneeling beside my body, though I wasn't in my body anymore. Doctors rushed in. The monitor beside me screamed one long, steady beep. "She's gone," someone said quietly. I wanted to tell them, "No, I'm still here." But my mouth didn't move. My hands didn't move. I watched as they covered me with a white sheet, and just like that, everything went black again. I don't know how much time passed, but then, I heard singing. Faint, beautiful singing. It sounded like a choir, far away, soft harmonies that wrapped around me like light. My mama's voice was there too, clear as day. She'd been gone 40 years, but there she was, calling my name. "Evelyn," she said, gentle and loving. "Baby, it's not your time yet." I tried to reach her. I wanted to stay in that peace forever. But then I heard another voice, this one trembling and human. "Wait," it said. I heard something. From the cold room. The morgue. Clara's voice. Then a loud clatter, hurried footsteps. Someone shouting, "Get a doctor." I swear, I heard her voice. And I did speak. Not with my mouth, but from somewhere deep inside me. I whispered, "Please, I'm still here." The light around me trembled. The singing faded. I felt cold, so cold, like I was being pulled through ice water. Then, sharp, heavy air filling my lungs. I gasped so hard my throat burned. My eyes shot open. A blinding white light above me. Nurses screaming. Someone dropping a clipboard. "She's breathing. Oh my God, she's breathing." It was Clara. Tears ran down her face as she grabbed my hand. "Mrs. Johnson, can you hear me?" I nodded weakly. My lips were cracked. My voice was gone, but I managed one word, "Mama." Clara just kept crying, whispering, "You came back. You came back." And I did, but I wasn't the same. Something happened in that darkness. Something real. And this story I'm about to tell you is what I saw and what I heard. After death, but before heaven. When I came back, the first thing I felt was pain. Not the sharp kind, not the kind that makes you scream. It was deeper. It was the ache of being pulled back into a body that had already said goodbye. My chest rose and fell. My fingers twitched. The world came back to me one sound at a time. The hum of the lights. The shuffling of shoes. The frantic voices of nurses who couldn't believe what they were seeing. I heard someone whisper, "She was gone for over 30 minutes. 30 minutes." They had moved me to the morgue. I remember the cold metal under my skin, the way the air bit into me like winter wind. And yet, somehow, I came back. Clara was there, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You scared us all," she said, voice shaking. "You stopped breathing, Evelyn. Your heart stopped." I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. The only sound that came out was a faint rasp. She squeezed my hand tighter. "You're safe now," she whispered. But I wasn't sure. Because even as I blinked up at the bright hospital lights, part of me was still there in that place I couldn't explain. A place between worlds. When I was gone, I didn't see a tunnel like they talk about on TV. I didn't see bright gates or angels with wings. What I saw was light, warm, living light, wrapping around me like a blanket. It didn't blind me, it held me. And in that light, I saw faces. People I hadn't seen in years. My mama, my brother Henry, my husband James. Standing tall and smiling like he did when we first met. He looked so real that I reached out to touch him, and when my hand passed through, it wasn't sad, it was peaceful. He said, "You done good, Evie, you raised our babies. You kept the faith." I remember whispering, "I'm tired, James, I just want to rest." He smiled the way he used to when he didn't want to tell me bad news. "Not yet, baby. You got one more story to tell." That's when I heard the singing again. The same melody from before, soft, low, like wind through trees. It was church music, but not from any church I knew. No instruments. Just voices, pure, holy. And then, a sound that didn't belong, a cry. Someone crying my name. "Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson, can you hear me?" It was Clara. Her voice reached through the light like a rope. I could feel her faith pulling me back. "Mama," I whispered again, not calling for my mother this time, but calling for life. And suddenly, that beautiful light faded. The singing stopped. I was falling, heavy and cold. When I opened my eyes, I saw Clara's trembling hands on my shoulders. She looked terrified and amazed all at once. "You came back," she kept saying. "You came back." They moved me to a different room that night, one with no machines. No beeping, no bright light in my face. Just quiet. Doctors came and went, whispering in disbelief. They ran test after test, but my heart was steady, my brain normal. They said there was no medical reason I should have woken up. But I knew better. I didn't come back because of science. I came back because of purpose. When you stand between this life and the next, you realize something. It's not our strength that keeps us alive. It's grace. It's mercy. It's someone bigger than us, saying, "Not yet." That night, I lay awake in that quiet hospital room, staring at the ceiling. The air smelled like bleach and rain. I could still hear the echo of the choir somewhere deep in my mind. And I asked God one question: why me? No voice answered, not out loud. But deep inside, I felt something stir. A whisper in my heart said, "Because your story isn't finished. There's still someone who needs to hear your voice." I didn't know who that someone was. Maybe it was Clara. Maybe it was the woman in the next room, crying softly in the dark. Maybe it was someone far away who'd lost hope. But I knew this: I was alive for a reason. Clara came back in before dawn. She looked exhausted but peaceful. She sat beside me, holding a cup of coffee in both hands. "You know," she said, "in all my years of nursing, I've never seen anything like that." "Me neither," I whispered, smiling weakly. She looked at me, eyes wide and honest. When I heard that voice in the morgue, I thought I was losing my mind. It was soft, but it said my name. I nodded slowly. "I called for you. I didn't even know how." Clara's hand trembled. It wasn't just a voice. It was like warmth. Like someone touched my heart and said, "Go back." For a long time, we sat there in silence, just breathing, just existing. She was crying again. So was I. Finally, she said, "Mrs. Johnson, do you think it was God?" I closed my eyes. "I don't think, baby," I said softly. "I know." The morning after I came back, everything felt different. The world looked the same gray hospital walls, the same humming lights, the same sound of carts rolling down the hallway. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. I felt like I was walking on borrowed time, like each breath was a gift, wrapped in invisible ribbon. The nurses called me a miracle. The doctors shook their heads and whispered outside my door, using words like impossible, inexplicable, and divine intervention. But I didn't care about the science. I cared about the silence. Because in that silence, I still heard echoes of the light. A day later, Clara came back to check on me. She brought flowers, lilies, white and soft, like the light I'd seen. "You look stronger today," she said, setting them by my bed. I smiled weakly. "That's because I'm not afraid anymore." She tilted her head. "Afraid? Of what?" "Of dying," I said simply. "But it's funny, once you've been there, you realize death isn't what you think it is. It's not darkness, it's peace. It's love without edges." Clara sat on the edge of my bed. "Then why do you think you came back?" I looked at her for a long moment. The morning sun was shining through the blinds, painting lines of gold across her face. "To remind people that faith still matters," I said quietly. "That even when science gives up, God doesn't." She nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes again. "You really believe that?" "I don't believe it," I said. "I know it." When I left the hospital 2 weeks later, the world felt brand new. The air smelled sweeter. The trees looked greener. The sound of church bells made my chest ache with gratitude. But not everyone believed my story. My youngest son, David, shook his head when I told him, "Mama, you were unconscious. You were dreaming." "Dreams don't stop a heart monitor," I told him softly. My daughter-in-law tried to smile, but couldn't hide the doubt in her eyes. They wanted to believe me. But belief is hard when you've never touched the other side. I didn't argue. I just said, "You'll understand one day. When it's your time, you'll see what I saw." And I prayed for them, not that they would believe me, but that they would feel what I felt, that gentle warmth, that mercy, that knowing that love never dies. A few months later, I started going back to church. The same small Baptist church I'd gone to for 40 years, the one with the creaky pews and stained glass windows that turned sunlight into rainbows. The first Sunday I walked in after my recovery, the whole congregation gasped. Some people clapped. Some cried. One woman said, "Lord, she's our Lazarus." I smiled and said, "No, baby. I'm just proof he still listens." The pastor asked if I would share my story. So I did. I stood at that old wooden pulpit, my hands shaking, my voice trembling. But I spoke every word from my heart. I went to the edge. I said, "I felt the light. I saw my mama, my husband, the people I've lost. And God told me, not yet. Your work isn't done." The church was silent. Not even a baby cried. I used to think faith was just something you carried in your pocket. I said, something small you took out when you were scared. But now I know, faith is breath. It's heartbeat. It's the reason I opened my eyes again. When I finished, the pastor walked over and took my hand. He said, "Sister Evelyn, you didn't just come back to live, you came back to testify." Word spread. Neighbors started visiting me at home, asking to hear the story for themselves. Some came because they were curious. Some came because they'd lost someone and needed hope. And some came because they didn't believe in God at all, but wanted to. Each time, I told them the same thing. I don't have proof, baby. I only have peace. And sometimes peace is the loudest proof of all. One afternoon, a young woman came to my porch. She was wearing scrubs, eyes red from crying. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, "my mama passed last week. I've been angry at God ever since. I don't know how to pray anymore." I took her hand in mine, her skin cold, trembling. "Then don't pray with words," I said. "Just sit in the quiet. God listens to tears too." She started crying again, and I just held her, because sometimes that's all we can do for each other. Hold on when life gets too heavy. At night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit by my window and think about that cold room, the place where I'd been gone, and I'd whisper, "Thank you, not for bringing me back, but for showing me what really matters before it's too late. Not money, not status, not even years. Just love, pure and simple. Because when you cross over, you don't take your things. You take your heart. You take your kindness. You take how you made people feel." A year later, I got a letter from Clara, the nurse who heard my voice. She had left her job at the hospital. She'd gone back to school to become a hospice counselor. She wrote, "You changed my life, Mrs. Johnson." That night, I stopped being just a nurse. I started believing in miracles. I cried reading it, because I realized that's why I came back. Not to tell a story, but to touch a soul. And maybe to touch yours, too. If you're listening to this, baby, if you've lost someone, if you're scared, if you're tired of fighting, I want you to remember something. There's a light waiting for you. It's not far. It's not cruel. It's love, pure and endless. And until your time comes, you hold on. You keep loving. You keep believing. Because if God can call a voice out of the cold room of a morgue, then he can bring you back from anything. It's been 3 years since that night in the cold room. 3 years since the sound of angels pulled me out of silence. I still wake before sunrise every day. I brew my tea, wrap my shawl around my shoulders, and sit by the same window where the morning light spills across my Bible. Every ray that touches my hands feels like a reminder. You're still here for a reason. When I first told my story, I never meant for it to travel past the walls of my little church. But the world has a way of listening when truth is spoken softly. One Sunday, a young man recorded my testimony on his phone. Just a shaky video of me sitting at the pulpit, voice cracking as I said, "If God can raise a voice from the cold room, he can raise hope from anywhere." He posted it online, and within a week, 1 million people had heard it. Letters started arriving, emails, messages from strangers. Across the country, a mother in Ohio, whose son had survived an overdose. A soldier's wife who said my story helped her sleep again after losing her husband. A nurse in Texas who wrote, "I hear their voices too, and now I'm not afraid. I read every one." Some nights I'd cry until the ink on the envelopes blurred. Because somehow, my second chance had become somebody else's first hope. One evening, a reporter came by. She was young, early 30s, and nervous. She asked if she could record our talk for a local station. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, adjusting her microphone, "why do you think this story touched so many people?" I thought for a moment, tracing the rim of my teacup. "Because everyone's been to a cold room," I said. "Not always a real one. Sometimes it's a season of grief, or depression, or loneliness. And maybe they just needed to hear that you can walk out of that room and breathe again." She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. When she left, she hugged me like family. The segment aired 2 weeks later. Within days, more people started showing up at church, folks from other towns, other states, just to meet the woman who spoke from the morgue. They'd sit on my porch, listen, pray, and leave lighter than when they came. I realized then, this was my work now. To be a living reminder that light never quits. But fame, that's never been what I wanted. I still walk to the grocery store with my cane. I still hum gospel tunes while watering my roses. Sometimes children point and whisper, "That's her." And I smile, because I'm not her, I'm just his. Every time someone thanks me, I tell them the same thing. "Don't thank me, baby. Thank the one who let me come back to tell it. Clara, the nurse who first heard my voice, still visits once a month. We sit out on the porch with lemonade and talk until the sun goes down. She tells me about her patients, how she prays with them now, how she keeps a candle lit in every hospice room. I never want anyone to feel cold again, she says. Last time she came, she brought a small wooden plaque she'd made herself. It read, "Even in the coldest place, faith can still breathe." She smiled shyly when she handed it to me. "It's your words," she said. I hung it right above my bed. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there watching the shadows move across the ceiling, listening to the old clock tick, and I thought about how far a single heartbeat can travel once it starts again. I remembered the faces of the doctors who gave up, the chill of the metal table, the sound of Clara's voice breaking through the dark, and I whispered into the quiet, "You see, Lord, they heard me. They finally heard me." Then I realized he'd been hearing me all along. Now, I speak at hospitals, nursing homes, and women's shelters. I tell them what I learned on the other side. That love doesn't stop at death. That miracles don't always come with thunder. Sometimes they come as a whisper in the cold. People ask, "What did it feel like to die?" And I tell them, it felt like being seen completely, gently, eternally seen. They ask, "Were you scared?" I smile. I was, until I realized the same hands that held me in the light were the ones that brought me back. I've written letters to my children, sealed with prayers instead of stamps. I tell them I forgive the times they weren't there, the times they doubted. Because when you've crossed over and returned, forgiveness stops being a choice. It becomes the air you breathe. Sometimes my grandson helps me film short messages on his phone. He posts them online for all those people still writing me. Simple things, like, "If you're lonely tonight, remember, heaven hasn't forgotten your name. If the doctor said there's no hope, let God have the last word." And every time we upload one, he smiles and says, "Grandma, they're gonna feel this." I hope they do. Because the truth is, I'm not special. I didn't earn my miracle. It was given, not for me to keep, but to pass on. So, if you're hearing my voice now, wherever you are, whatever you've lost, please listen. You are not forgotten. You are not too far gone. And no matter how cold life feels, faith still breathes. I'm living proof. I was the voice in the morgue. And now, I am the echo that refuses to fade.